All right, welcome, ZASLOW Show 2.0. It is a Monday, the 12th of December. Good to have you aboard, your favorite little podcast here. Getting going, week number 7, I believe it is, of ZASLOW Show 2.0. Can't do any of this without you guys. Appreciate you. Make sure you like, you rate, you comment, do all that good stuff wherever you're listening to the podcast. We're available on all podcast platforms. If you're watching right now on the YouTube channel, youtube.com/@ZASLOWShow. People seem to like that they could see me now. I mean, I was doing local radio for almost 20 years, and now you can finally see me. You can see me do the show. You see the hand movements, all that stuff, all right? You can take a look at this, put them right here, whatever you want to do. So appreciate all you guys for hanging out with us through the first 7 weeks of the show. We continue to grow. Can't do it without you guys. Can't do it without our sponsors. That includes our title sponsor from day number 1, Anidjar and Levine, Accident Attorneys, 800-747-FREE. That's 800-747-3733 from before day number 1, actually. Those guys, they believed in me. They believe in the show. They believe in what we're doing here. Anidjar and Levine, Accident Attorneys. If you got any kind of accident that you're dealing with, personal injury that you're dealing with, whatever the accident was, they will take care of getting you the financial compensation that you deserve. You just make sure that you get healthy and you get better and you recover. 800-747-3733. And those are my guys there, Anidjar and Levine, Accident Attorneys. All right. This was a brutal sports weekend for us here in South Florida. A wretched turn of events for all 3 of our teams. Although for 2 of the teams, you could say, hey, well, wasn't really a turn of events. We've been experiencing this so far the first couple months of the season, all right? But the Dolphins last night, that's obviously the main story of the day. The Dolphins last night lose 23-17 to the Los Angeles Chargers. That's right, the Chargers, they play in Los Angeles this year. So the Dolphins, who are flexed to Sunday Night Football. Now remember, this is a couple weeks ago. This was before they've lost 2 in a row now, 8-5. The Dolphins were 8-3, talk of the NFL. Their quarterback, Tua Tagovailoa, talk of the NFL. MVP conversation. That, by the way, is completely out the window. That is completely out the window. You know that. There is no chance that Tua is in the MVP conversation anymore. I took him out of the MVP conversation last week. You can't have... if you're going to be the MVP, you can't have a stinker, okay? It doesn't ruin your season. Doesn't mean you're not having a good season. But if you're going to be the MVP, you can't have a stinker like Tua had last week. Now it's 2 in a row. There is no more talk about Tua in the MVP. That doesn't mean that he's not your guy. That doesn't mean you still don't love Tua. I love Tua. But I could sit here and tell you, he has had us eating a giant turd sandwich the last couple of weeks. Don't talk about Tua in the MVP conversation anymore. It's not a valid conversation. But 2 weeks ago, the Dolphins are flexed to Sunday Night Football, and they've been embarrassed the past 2 weeks. They have. They've been absolutely embarrassed. And this loss feels different from last week. It does. I'll tell you why in a moment here. So, we're obviously going to do a lot of Dolphins. That's going to be the majority of our show. We got your full NFL Week 14 rundown. Tonight, Week 14 will wrap with Cardinals-Patriots. Terrible game. Another week where I got to watch 3 hours of the worst quarterback in the NFL, Mac frickin' Jones. So tonight you got Week 14 wrapping up with a stinker of a game. It is what it is. You got the gambling going on. You got the fantasy football. It's a lot of our last week of the regular season for fantasy football. So you may have a lot riding on this. There you go. So we'll have your full Week 14 NFL rundown coming up on the show. Heat and Panthers poll question for today. I'll tell you what the ZASLOW Show 2.0 poll question of the day is. All right, you can go right now. Make sure that you vote. You guys are already out there voting early and often. I love it, all right? So you want to go vote at ZASLOW Show. You can vote for today's ZASLOW Show 2.0 poll, which is, who are you most confident in recovering from this weekend? So the Dolphins, a lot of questions now, legitimate questions, after their loss to the Chargers. The Panthers, with losses Saturday to Tampa, got their ass kicked. Sunday, yesterday, to the Kraken, got their ass kicked. The Miami Heat, they lost Saturday night at home to the San Antonio Spurs. Who are you most confident in recovering from this weekend's games? The Miami Heat, the Florida Panthers, the Miami Dolphins. So go vote right now at ZASLOW Show. I'll update the poll question a little bit later on in today's show. But there you have it. You can also, of course, always hit me up at ZASLOWJ as well on Instagram, whichever one you want. All right, so that's the poll question for today. Make sure you hit that up. Let me start with a little bit of good news here. I actually start with the bad news. That was the Dolphins. But let me veer on over to some good news, all right? Let's get the juices flowing here. Let's see if I could feel good on a Monday morning, because I don't feel so good. I'm very upset about our teams. Very, very upset. But let's start with a little bit of good news. So you guys know. Now look, I don't mind doing this here because, you know, if you're a dedicated ZASLOW Show 2.0 listener, you know that we talk a lot about my personal life, my family, and the goings-ons at the ZASLOW Mansion. And one of the things that were going on this weekend, my son, who is goalkeeper for Wesson Select U14 boys, they just finished up their regular season last week. Yeah, last week they just finished up their regular season, 8-2-2, great regular season, and they had a tournament this past weekend, the Miami Classic. All right, this is my son's second year on the team. Never won one of these tournaments. Been a finalist once, been a semifinalist a couple of other times. They have not, and they're good enough to win these tournaments. These tournaments are hard as hell to win. And they lost in their regular season. They lost in their league semifinals last year. So it's kind of always a bridesmaid, never the bride kind of scenario. And my son in particular, look, the whole team's been working really hard, but my son in particular is just dying to win one of these tournaments, win one of these championships. So Miami Classic was this weekend. And I think we were it was 8 teams in our bracket. I think we were the only team from Broward. And look, if you don't know what's what, the further south you go, a lot of times the better the teams are, okay? The programs are very, very serious. So 6 of the teams were Miami. One of the teams was from Texas, flew in here for the weekend or for the 4 days to play in the tournament. And I think we were the only Broward team. So really good competition. And my son's team, Wesson Select U14 boys, they won the tournament. Which is, I mean, what a great weekend. Like I said, we're all upset with the Dolphins, the Heat, the Panthers, what's going on there. But you guys know I share a lot of my personal stuff here on ZASLOW Show 2.0. I care very much about my son's soccer team, and we had a tremendous weekend. It's why I wasn't at the Briny last night. You can see my hat right here, Briny Irish Pub, BrinyPubPompano.com, live music every night, 7 nights a week, all right? You go out there to the Briny, go BrinyPubPompano.com. You can check out everything they got going on a daily basis. But I already told you, every single night, you got live music there at the Briny. So BrinyPubPompano.com. You can check out what they got going on. I mean, it's a great-looking hat here that I'm rocking. And as far as tonight goes, look, you got Adam, Jason live tonight. Monday Night Football starting at 8:15. Patriots and Cardinals. The Briny Hour, it's happy hour. The Briny Hour, 4 to 7 every day. And you got a Monday Night Prime Rib special tonight. So head on over to the Briny. Again, BrinyPubPompano.com, Atlantic Boulevard, all the way to the ocean. But don't drive right into the ocean. Get a parking space. And right there on the right side, you're going to see is Briny Pub, all right? So Briny Irish Pub, go check out my guys. It's why I wasn't there last night to watch the Dolphins, because we had a very big weekend as far as the Miami Classic goes. And congrats to the Wesson Select U14 boys. They win the tournament. They're the Miami Classic champions. And my son had a great weekend. He did. Great weekend. They won on Thursday. I already told you, actually, we did the show on Friday. They won on Thursday night. They beat a team from Key Biscayne 4-0. And then on Saturday morning, they beat... No, I'm sorry. Saturday morning, they beat a team from Key Biscayne 4-3. On Thursday night, they beat a different team from Miami. Then on Sunday morning, they beat a team from Doral 2-0. And on yesterday, then they had to play in the championship game yesterday late afternoon. And they played another team from Key Biscayne and smoked them. Like, our boys were motivated, fired up, ready to win one of these. They knew it was a great opportunity that was put in front of them. Just smoked them. Great game, 5-0. My son was tested once, made one huge diving save, all right? But otherwise, that was the only time he was really tested. A couple other little saves. They win 5-0 yesterday. I'm really proud of all of them. It was a great, great weekend, and I'm so happy for my son. You know, he wanted it desperately. There was one moment. There was one really cool moment. If I could share this real quick, and then we'll get back to the shitty stuff, which is our sports teams. But one quick moment, you know, I stand by in the second half. I was seated, me and my wife, you know, a bunch of us from the team were seated close to my son's goal, so I'm kind of like in line with him. And there was at one point like we were up maybe like 4-0, and it was in the third. It was in like the third quarter of the game, and he looked over at me at one point and he smiled, and he never does that during games, never ever. Looked over at me and smiled, and I gave a fist pump. You know, it's like we did it finally. We've been working so hard for this, so. That was a really cool moment. It meant a lot to him, and it meant a lot to us. So again, super big congratulations to all those kids, Western Select U14. They've worked really hard over the last however long. They've worked really hard to get this done. So really happy about that. All right, very good. So again, you can go and vote at the poll question right now. ZASLOW Show 2.0 poll. Which team do you have the most confidence in recovering from this weekend? And so we'll get to some Heat and Panthers stuff, but let's do the Dolphins here. So for the second straight week, and it's rather amazing that for the second straight week, a Dolphins offense that is so good, a Dolphins team that is so much fun, for the second straight week, it just feels like absolute torture watching them. That's what it was. And it's torturous because you know what they're capable of. That's where the torture comes from. Last night, again, was torture watching the Miami Dolphins offense. And, I mean, I'm not going to sit here and tell you I don't know what's going on. I know during the game last night, Chris Collinsworth was making a very big point about how, all right, you see what's happening here. They're dropping linebackers back. They're playing the safety up. They're taking away the middle of the field, and that's going to disrupt the timing. I'd like to believe that Mike McDaniel, like if Chris Collinsworth is seeing that from up in the booth, I'd like to believe that Mike McDaniel sees the same thing. I thought we were going to be able to make those type of adjustments in the second half. I'd like to believe we're going to be able to make those adjustments next week, except we're going to Buffalo, and it's going to be rain and sleet and snow, and it's going to be a disaster. There is no way, if you are a Dolphin fan right now, that you don't think right now on Saturday night, I mean, it's a short week too, to boot. Sunday Night Football. It's not even like Sunday afternoon, Sunday night, so the team got home at like 7, 8 a.m. this morning because of the time difference. So it's Sunday Night Football and Sunday Night on the West Coast. Sunday Night Football, get back Monday morning, and now you got a game on Saturday night in Buffalo. So short week by, not just a day, really by like a day and a half. You got a short week, and they're going to Buffalo, and if you are a Dolphin fan, there is no way that realistically you don't think that the Dolphins are going to Buffalo on Saturday night to get smoked. I hate having to do that right now because we've all been so excited all season. But really for the first time, and yes, Tua was hurt, so they lost those 3 games, but what do you expect? Bridgewater was terrible. Skylar Thompson was terrible. This is really the first adversity that the Dolphins are facing this season. This is really the first time. And they failed last night up against that adversity, and now they're facing their toughest test of the season because that Charger team is nothing compared to the Bills. And look, I know the Bills were no first prize yesterday against the Jets, but the Bills... If you don't think they've had this game circled on their calendar, the Dolphins coming to town in the middle of December, where the Dolphins beat them back in week 3, and now the Bills essentially have a chance to end the Dolphins' chance of winning the division. For me, I think the Dolphins' chance of winning division ended last night. You needed to win that game so you're only a game back, and then you can win at Buffalo, and then you pull even, but you own the tiebreaker, so you're really ahead of them. And then the final 3 games of the season, Packers, Patriots, Jets, come on. The Dolphins lost the division last night. If we want to be real, the Dolphins, their chance of winning division last night ended with that loss to the Chargers. There's no other way to look at it. And I said that going into the game, where if they have any chance of winning division, and we may even talk about playoffs too. If they have any chance of winning the division, they have to win at the Chargers. The division is out the window now. So now what you're looking at is you're hoping that you could jump to 5th. They're in 6th right now. You're hoping that you're going to be able to jump to 5th. They are not going to get first place in the AFC. They're not going to get first place in the AFC East either. So right now, the way that the Dolphins sit, 6th place in the AFC, they would be facing Baltimore in round 1, which I think is at Baltimore, which I think is a pretty favorable matchup. If you were to jump up to 5 right now, then you'd be at Tennessee, who looks to be spiraling. All right, so you want to avoid that 7 spot, which right now belongs to the Chargers, because then you would potentially be playing at Buffalo or at Kansas City in round 1. So 5 or 6 is a decent position to be in. You'd rather be 5, but 6 isn't so bad either if you're the Dolphins. The division is out of reach now. It is. Because, I mean, look, even if the Dolphins win this weekend against Buffalo, which you cannot feel good about, it's okay. Look, you're allowed to be a Dolphin fan and be doubting things right now. You're allowed to be a Dolphin fan and feel really shitty about the last couple weeks, especially last night, because last night was worse than the week before. You're allowed to feel bad about the Dolphins' chances. You're allowed to seriously doubt. You're allowed to sit here like me and say, I have very, very little confidence in the Dolphins going to Buffalo this weekend and win that game. You're allowed to do that and still be a Dolphin fan. You don't have to sit here with Dolphin pom-poms to be a Dolphin cheerleader to be considered a Dolphin fan. You can be realistic. You could be realistic, still go into the game on Saturday night saying, man, I feel terrible about this. I don't think it's going to be good. And then hopefully be pleasantly surprised. I mean, I'd like nothing more than that. But I can't have any type of confidence in this Dolphin team going into Saturday. And here's the thing. See, I didn't take this into consideration. This is my fault. I did not consider this part. And I really should have done this. This Dolphin team, I've been saying how it's like in the 90s. Every Sunday, I think we're going to win. I think we're going to score every time we have the ball. It's like when we had Marino. We're just like that team now. Here's the part that I didn't consider. And this is on me. Here's the part that I forgot about. What else happened with those Dolphins teams? They always got off to great starts. Go take a look how many of those years those teams got off to 8-3 starts. All the time. 5-1. 7-3. 8-4. Like, great starts all those years. What also happened to all of those teams? That December collapse. And that's on me. Like, we're so far removed, 30 years. We're so far removed from those really good Dolphin teams every single year that I didn't take into account the offense is good. Those teams, we always thought they had a chance at Marino. They always had great starts. First half of the year, first place. What always happened in December? Collapse. And that's on me. Because I didn't take that into account. I forgot about that. I was too excited about everything that we've seen so far this year that I didn't remember that part. And that's what it feels like right now. Because it feels like we're staring 3 straight losses in the face this weekend. Because if it's not bad enough that the Dolphins' running game is non-existent after a few weeks, during that win streak, it was like, okay, this Dolphin team, they could run the ball. You could have your doubts about Tua in the weather, because we've seen it. But running the ball travels. If you could run the ball, all right, snow, cold, whatever, that's fine. The running game is non-existent now. And Tua is going to go into a game in Buffalo this weekend where they're expecting rain and snow, just like yesterday. And it's not Tua going into a weather game in the MVP conversation. It's Tua going into a weather game coming off of two of the worst games of his career. 2 weeks ago, worst game of his season. Last night, worst game of his career. And that version of Tua, whose confidence has to be shaken. I mean, look, we're talking about a quarterback who, and not every player's like this. Hey, our pal Raja Bell on the show last week brought this up. We're talking about how some players, they need that extra confidence instilled in them from the head coach or whoever. Maybe it's from teammates. And Tua is very clearly one of those guys. So if Tua is one of those guys who benefits from the way he's treated by his coach or teammates, gets a little bit extra confidence, gets a confidence boost in that regard, you also have to believe that if he has a couple poor games in a row, his confidence is going to be shaken a little bit. This is also a player who told us that there were times last year he looked in the mirror and asked, do I suck? So going into Buffalo next weekend with the rain and the snow is not Tua the MVP candidate. It's Tua the struggling quarterback for the first time this year. And that has to really concern you. Because it really concerns me. Last night was worse than the loss to San Francisco, because the loss to San Francisco, I was talking about it all week, and I was right, but I was talking about it all week, where I don't give the 49er defense any credit for that performance against the Dolphins last week. Tua was not pressured on those throws that he was overthrowing, underthrowing, whatever it was. That was all on Tua. You got guys running around the field wide open. Chris Sims said the same thing. You know, those tweets that I read you last week. Yesterday, though, Tua was pressured. He looked uncomfortable for the second week in a row. And if Tua wasn't missing guys, and he missed them play, which, by the way, it happened once with Hill, and it happened once with Waddle. Could they not see the ball? There was one throw to Hill over the middle. It looked like he had no idea the ball was there. And there was the deep, and there was a post pattern to Waddle, where he didn't look like he saw the ball either. Anyway, if Tua wasn't missing guys yesterday, which he did plenty, the Charger defense, they were batting the ball away. They were knocking the ball out of, or before it got to the receiver's hands. Charger defense was excellent yesterday. So it's not like I'm ever going to sit. It's not like, ZASLOW, you'll never give the other team credit. No. Last week, the 49ers, I'm not giving them credit. This week, the Chargers, their defense was excellent. Excellent. Tua stunk, and a lot of it had to do with the Chargers defense. They were excellent. There's no other way to look at it. And the whole reason that Sunday Night Football, the whole reason that the Dolphins were flexed to Sunday Night Football, not just because, it's a game that has playoff implications, not just because the Dolphins are super exciting, because remember, they flexed that game when they were 8-3 before the 2-game losing streak, but also you got Tua versus Herbert. Good versus evil. And what wound up happening? Man, 2 weeks in a row now, but especially today, because of Tua versus Herbert. Man, you're going to put on those national TV shows, those national talking head shows, and they're going to crush Tua and the Dolphins. And they're going to praise Justin Herbert till blue in the face. That's all that ammunition that the national media loves. They're going to pound Tua, and they're going to love Herbert. That game last night couldn't have gone worse for the Dolphins. Could not have gone worse. And I sat here all week. I mean, look, I got to eat it. I sat here all week. Tua's going to take that ass. Herbert sucks. I really don't think that, by the way. I think he's awesome. But Tua's going to take that ass. Herbert sucks. Going to show everybody he was the right guy, which I do believe. He's going to show everybody he was the right guy. They made the right pick. And look, I'm not the only Dolphin fan who said it. All of us were saying it. And now we all look stupid. And now we all have to eat it. Now we all have to eat shit until at least this weekend, where it feels like we're going to eat a lot of shit again. Not a good weekend. Although I told you, my son's soccer team, that was very fun. That was a good part of the weekend. But nobody else cares about that. As far as our sports teams go, terrible. I don't know what's going on with this Dolphins offense. Tua looks like a different player. And for 2 weeks in a row, this offense has been torture. Who would have thought, man, when they were 8-3, best offense in the league, that for 2 straight weeks I would sit here and tell you that watching this Dolphins offense has been torture. Tyreek Hill, by the way, he's something else. That fumble recovery, you've never seen anything like it. You know what? I haven't checked it. Someone must have asked Teron Armstead last night, did he bat the football to Tyreek Hill on purpose? That's amazing if he did. Like, he saw that, first of all, how didn't he recover it? But he saw that at that point, since he couldn't recover it, he wasn't going to be able to get on top of the ball, so he just kind of punched it out, which you're allowed to do backwards. And then once Hill had the ball, I jumped off the couch, peace! And I started walking around the family room. I mean, you knew no one was going to catch him. And then, of course, like that deep ball, whenever the Dolphins are struggling, it happened in the game against the 49ers too. And you got the effort play, which, of course, was birthed the game against Baltimore. Whenever the Dolphins offense is struggling in the second half, they're going to find Tyreek Hill for a deep touchdown. And that happened again yesterday. But I think we could all admit, well, no, I mean, maybe not all admit, but for me, the biggest play of the game, and Josh Boyer's going to be fired after this year. This defense is just not cutting it. The biggest play of the game for me, and I don't understand this, it was the defense conceding on 3rd and goal from the 17 before the end of the half. So the score is 10-7. We played a shit half, and the Chargers are going to get the ball to start the 3rd quarter. So this is an important sequence. It's 3rd and goal from the 17 because I think we sacked Herbert. And the Dolphins were rushing 3, I think, and everyone else was at the goal line. So they're just trying to prevent a touchdown. Okay, except Herbert then dumps it off to Eckler, and he gets to the 1. And then the Chargers go for it, and they score. So the Dolphins conceded 16 yards there. 3rd and goal from the 17. They're like, nah, let's just keep everything in front of us. And instead of it being a field goal, like hold them to like a 5 or a 6 yard gain on a little dump off, maybe they don't get anything. Worst case scenario, we go into the half down 13-7. But instead, I don't understand the defense that we're playing there. They pick up 16 yards. Get to the 1. Eckler then scores on the next play. 17-7 at the half. We were lucky because the Chargers got the ball at the start of the 3rd, that the Dolphins defense was pretty good there and got the ball back. But otherwise, it could have been blowout city as a result of this. So instead of this was the biggest play of the game for me. Instead of going into the half down 13-7, somebody say they should have stopped him on 4th down at the last play. Like, play a normal defense, stop at like the 10-yard line, make them kick a field goal. Instead of going to half down 13-7, they're down 17-7. And they wind up losing 23-17. Like, instead of at that point, I mean, you know, whatever the score could have been. Instead of 23-17, maybe it was, I don't know. You understand what I'm saying? The game winds up being played out different. Like the Dolphins, it was 23-14, okay? If they held them to a field goal there at the end of the 2nd quarter, you know, instead of going for the long field goal Jason Sanders so that you could try the onside kick, which, oh my God, they almost got. You're not going for a field goal there. You're trying to get a touchdown there. And maybe you wind up winning the game. So they allowed them 4 extra points there because of that stupid defense. And those are 4 points that likely loomed pretty large. Because at the end of the game, the Dolphins would have had a chance to win with a touchdown. So that to me was the biggest play of the game. Was I don't understand what kind of stupid defense we were playing on 3rd and goal. And essentially, and gave them the chance for 4th and 1, which they scored on. And look, both teams were getting pressure on the quarterbacks. Dolphins defense got lots of pressure on the quarterback, but Herbert was making all the plays that Tua wasn't. You know, both quarterbacks were made to feel uncomfortable. And our quarterback could not make any of the plays while being made to feel uncomfortable. Their quarterback made them all. including that huge throw to Keenan Allen, which he was covered so well. I think it was by Kohu. He's covered so well and just and snuck it right out, and they're pointing at each other, and then they made love. But Herbert made all of the plays being pressured. Tua. Now, I give Tua credit in the second half. Second half, Tua's showing guts. He's running the ball for multiple first downs. But Herbert made all the plays on the drive at the end of the game that clinched it for Los Angeles. What, they started at the 10-yard line? They started at the 10. They got 78 yards, I think, on the drive. They kicked a field goal, 23-14. That's your ball game. But like I said, the score is 19-14 before Jason Sanders makes that 55-yard field goal before the onside kick. The score is 19-14, not 23-14, if the Dolphins defense had a clue at the end of the first half. And at 19-14, they're not kicking a field goal in that spot. They're going to go for the touchdown. And maybe they wind up winning a game that they had no business winning. So to me, biggest play of the game was the defense conceding on 3rd and goal at the end of the second quarter. I don't know what was happening there. And you know what? I mean, look, I was very confident going into the game. You know that. You know that. I was very confident going into the game. Once the game once the Dolphins were down, what are we talking? Once it was 10-0, really, because the offense couldn't do anything. There was never a single moment that you thought the Dolphins were going to win the game. Even when it was 10-7, at the fluke play by Tyreek Hill, it's like, all right, the only points that we scored here were off of a fluke play. There was never a moment in the game that you thought the Dolphins were going to win. There wasn't. And this loss feels different than last week. Because last week, I was mad with them losing last week. And I told you guys, you should be mad, but you should feel good about being mad. Because being mad means your team is good. It's a game you feel they should have won. You should be angry. I don't feel that way today. I'm mad, but it's not a good mad feeling. It's a really concerned mad feeling. This is a loss that feels different than last week, and now you have a ton of doubt that is creeping into your thoughts, rightfully so. I mean, I don't think they're going to win next weekend going into Buffalo. That doesn't make me any less of a fan. I'd love to be wrong. But this loss feels so different because last week, if there was ever a loss you could feel good about, I was mad. And I was mad because we should have won that game. We were better than them. I still think we're better than the Chargers, but they kicked our ass last night. We did not deserve that game. We should not have won that game. There was not a moment that I thought we were going to win that game once the game got going. And now you got a lot of doubt going into this weekend. And it feels like a December collapse now, until proven wrong. And you know what? Mike McDaniel, he's got some work now. He's done an awesome job this year. But for the first time this year, with Tua, because forget about Bridgewater and Skylar Thompson, for the first time this year, this Dolphin offense is torture. And Mike McDaniel's got some work in front of him now. Because, there's more and more tape out there, and now you got 2 weeks worth, although not so much the 49ers, because that was really on Tua, but especially yesterday, the Chargers, now you got tape out there. You don't think the Bills are watching film this week on exactly what the Chargers did? Not the 49ers. That was on Tua missing throws. The Bills are going to spend all week watching what the Chargers did, and they're going to copy it. And now Mike McDaniel's going to have to counter. This loss this week feels a lot worse. Go vote right now. ZASLOW Show 2.0 poll. You know what the poll question is. At ZASLOW Show, go vote right now. Here is the poll question. ZASLOW Show 2.0 poll is, who are you most confident in recovering from this weekend? And your choices are Miami Heat, Florida Panthers, Miami Dolphins. And right now, there's a lot of votes out there. You're voting early and often. I love it. Right now, the leader at 60% is the Miami Dolphins. So, you're most confident in the Dolphins recovering from this weekend. My guess is, not because maybe you actually think they're going to, but because of these 3 teams, the only one who has been any good for any stretch are the Miami Dolphins. And they've been great for most of the season. But the only one of those 3 teams that has been good for any stretch of the season is the Dolphins.